We got Michael's report. Okay, good. Lucky 13. I love it. Good morning, everyone. I'll call the meeting of the Regional Transportation Authority, the regular board meeting, to order. And will everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's great. I always tell my children and school children that even the RTA says the Pledge of Allegiance, and we ought to be happy to do so as school starts to get underway. And I always like to remind people that the CTA is what I affectionately call the yellow school bus of Chicago, with literally hundreds of thousands of school kids and college students for DePaul and Loyola and the University of Illinois at Chicago and the University of Chicago riding our system every day to get to school. And as school begins, I think it's important that we all remember how many literal hundreds of thousands of students, not only Chicago public school students, but those who attend parochial schools, are riding our system every day. And Chicago is very different than the rest of the state in the fact that the school children of Chicago and these college students generally, in most cases, ride the CTA. And we're very unique as a city where we literally have hundreds of thousands of youth every day on our system, which I think is great. But in addition to all of the people that we're moving to work each day, we are moving hundreds of thousands of school children and college students, unlike many of our other peer transit agencies. New York might be the one exception who does the same thing we do every day. But it's never lost on me how many kids, young people, take our system every day. So with that, Madam Secretary, will you please take the roll?
Certainly. Director Anderson? Director Colson? Here. Director Durante?
Here.
Director Frege? Aye. Director Fuentes?
Here.
Director Higgins?
Here.
Director Cotel?
Here.
Director Lewis?
Here.
Director McGallis?
Here.
Director Melvin?
Here.
Director Pang? Director Ross?
Here.
Dr. Sager?
Here.
Director Troiani?
Here.
Chairman Dillard?
Here.
We have a quorum of 13 present with 2 absent and 1 vacancy.
Great. Our first action item is item 3A, and that's the approval of the minutes from the meetings that we held on August 23rd of 2018. Are there any questions, additions, anything else on those? If not, Director Frege moves that we adopt our minutes from August 23rd, seconded by Dr. Sager. I like that. I like that term, doctor. You're better than director. With that, Madam Secretary, let's take a roll call so we have a baseline roll call.
Okay. Director Durante?
Aye.
Director Frege?
Aye.
Director Fuentes?
Aye.
Director Higgins?
Aye.
Director Cotel?
Aye.
Director Lewis?
Aye.
Director McGallis?
Aye.
Director Melvin?
Aye.
Director Ross?
Aye.
Dr. Sager?
Aye.
Director Troiani?
Aye.
Chairman Dillard?
Aye.
12 ayes, 2 absent, and I'm off. Oh, Where am I? Director Colson. Okay, sorry about that. I didn't start at the top this time. 13 ayes, 2 absent, and 1 vacancy.
Great. Thank you. That's why the Illinois House has electronic roll call taking, right? But you're more accurate than the machine, Audrey. Thank you, Madam Secretary. 13-0. that our minutes are approved. Item 4 is the public comment section of the meeting. We do not have any speakers scheduled for today, so let's move on to Director Leanne, or Executive Director Leanne Redden's report, which is item 5. Leanne, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. We're running a little ahead of schedule, so but we'll keep on track. Where we always start for each meeting, unfortunately, is through the end of August, the state owes the RTA $444.8 million. That's the combination of the matching funds that the state gives us to both the debt service and the public transportation funds. The state is 14 months behind on the ASA payments. It is 14 months behind on the AFA payments. And the equivalent of about 9.9 months, that's very specific, months behind on PTF. We could probably just round to about 10 months behind on that. The year-to-date cost of short-term debt is $4.7 million. So that's the amount that I think most of you know and understand that we have to basically fund and cover by us having to issue short-term debt to essentially float monies to keep the service boards whole and operating while the state continues to be in arrears to us. As you know, the state legislature is out of session until November this year. In D.C., the House and the Senate are now both back in session. However, they are focusing mostly on executive branch nominations, spending bills, and smaller legislative actions. So there's not a huge amount sort of impacting us at this point, which is probably a good thing. Okay, a couple of other things I just wanted to bring to your attention. Last month, the RTA released its community planning and planning program implementation report, which is a means for us to actually convey the impact of the program's completed plans and the impacts that they have on local development. We have developed the report by asking communities who have completed their planning efforts through our program to identify any policy changes or infrastructure improvements that were put in place that support and really came as a result of the plan recommendations. In addition, they were also asked to list any new developments that were approved, under construction, or completed in their suburban TOD area during the previous calendar year. The highlights for 2017 include 41 developments completed or under construction near transit stations in 2017, 2,827 residential units, 165,000 square feet of commercial or retail space, and 6,152 square feet of office space has been sort of spurred on by the planning efforts that the staff have done in conjunction with those local municipalities. 8 of our partner communities revised their zoning ordinances to be consistent with the plan's recommendations that they did, including a mix of land uses, walkability, and increased density in or and around transit stations. For example, Village of Brookfield, with RTA assistance, revolutionized the way future real estate development will be approved near their 3 BNSF stations by modernizing their zoning code. The first major overhaul to the code since 1964, and details how commercial mixed-use and multifamily residential development must meet specific density and parking requirements, building types, design standards, and land use requirements. If future development conforms to that new code, it will not be subject to any lengthy review process by their Planning and Zoning Commission or approval by the Village Board, saving a lot of valuable time and ultimately money for developers and encouraging new development in and around those 3 metro train stations. 9 communities established a special funding district, such as the tax increment financing district or a special service area, or a business improvement district to help fund the advancement of some of those transit-oriented development areas in and around the stations. These funds go towards such activities as attracting infill development, making needed infrastructure improvements, assembling vacant land or underutilized land to make the parcels more redevelopable, that's a tongue twister, and maintaining and enhancing the facades of existing businesses. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the RTA's community planning program and our involvement in community planning as it relates to public transportation and transit supportive land uses. So providing the funds and the technical assistance that the RTA does to complete these plans, as well as the support to implement the plans, has really encouraged municipalities in the region to develop walkable and more sustainable communities near transit stations and along transit corridors, and really maximizing sort of the broader investment that the transit network has already made in our region. The RTA has currently, right now, a call for projects out with applications from local governments due on October 26th. And as most of you, I think, know, that we do this now, we partner this call for projects with CMAP, with what they call their local technical assistance program, and we do it in a coordinated, collaborative way. We kind of end up splitting up the projects. Obviously, we take the more transit-related ones, and they take kind of the others. It's a much more comprehensive way and an understandable way for local municipalities to sort of think about this at one time, work across our collective staffs at CMAP and RTA to think through those projects. We provide actually support meetings as they're trying to think through some of their ideas, and they kind of just apply once and then not have to sort of track down and dog two different application processes. So that has been pretty successful over the past several years since we've been doing that coordinated effort. All of that information that I just told you about too is online. So back at your local contacts in terms of looking at the report on the work that's been done to date, as well as the application, all that information is available on our website. If anyone has any questions, we'd be more than happy to send you direct links to those and or in any of your sort of local municipalities, or otherwise want to sort of ping us to send something out directly to people. We're more than happy to do that. Okay, a couple of other September happenings. Families across Illinois, as the chairman just talked about, started school. The school year is back in full force. We attended several outreach events aimed at promoting transit as a way of getting back to school. We also promoted the CTA free ride for the first day of school offer. Later this month, on Saturday, September 22nd, we'll also participate in Car Free Day. We are asking riders to tell us if they're car free and why it works for them, and we'll share those responses across our social media channels. Car Free Day is a national, actually I think it's an international thing that people embark on. And a couple of other happenings around the region. We continue to work to talk about our regional strategic plan, our funding needs, and really, more importantly, educating residents and other stakeholders across the region. Next month, our regional transit leaders have been invited to discuss our region's transit future at the Executive Club's Civic Affairs Forum. That's the billing for that event. I'll moderate the discussions with CTA's President Dorval Carter, with Metro CEO and Executive Director Jim Dewinski, and Pace Suburban Bus Executive Director TJ Ross. Later in October, Chairman Dillard will also be on a panel with McDonald's Communication Chief Robert Gibbs and Senate President John Cullerton, hosted by MPC. The topic is Transit Means Business, looking at the importance of transit as an economic development tool. So we continue to try to talk to as many people, reach as many people as possible, to elevate the conversation and help people better understand and not take for granted the importance of the transportation network that we have. With that ends my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions of Leanne? If not, thank you very much. We'll move on to item 6, and there's a couple of informational items here. The first is an update on the activities of the RTA Transit Access Citizens Advisory Panel. Normally we have Greg Pullman here with his beautiful service animal to give us the report, but today we've got our own Michael Vandercreek. Michael?
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, directors. Greg asked me to pass on that he apologized he's not able to be here today, and he gave me some talking points that he'd like me to share on the RTA cab. The last meeting was on July 17th. In addition to our regular reports on mobility services department stats and legislative affairs, excuse me, we provided a couple of presentations to that board on some important topics. One was the Eligibility Review Board. For some background, the Eligibility Review Board is a board that listens to appeals of ADA paratransit eligibility decisions. So customers have the right to appeal if they don't agree with their decision. We have a 3-person board, which is an RTA representative that listens, as well as a representative from the Mayor's Office of People with Disabilities, and 1 community member, so we have peer representation on that board. We're in the process of recruiting 3 new community members for that board to listen to appeals, and we asked our committee, the RTA CAB, to help us with the recruitment of those members. So we provided that education and gave them materials in order to help us recruit. We hope to have new ERB members on board by the beginning of 2019. The other topic that we shared was our mobility management video series. So we put together a series of 6 videos that are targeted at helping people with disabilities and older adults understand their transit options throughout the region, including accessibility of our fixed route system and other community-based paratransit systems. The point of those videos is to help customers understand their options and hopefully help people to make decisions in addition to ADA paratransit for their ridership. We have promoted these videos pretty widely. Our mobility outreach coordinators are advertising them to all the agencies that they do outreach to throughout the region. And we also have the 6 video series on the RTA website under Rider Resources, as well as RTA's YouTube page. So those are the items that Greg asked me to talk about this morning, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Michael. If any of you have not viewed some of our videos, I mean, they are spectacular. They're really well done, and they help me to really understand the importance of what we do. I know Director Fuentes, particular, has an interest in this area. But these videos, if you ever wonder what we do, and I can't stress to the public enough of the importance of ADA paratransit and what we do for people with disabilities every day. That is a major function and responsibility of what we do. And the numbers are, as you see, increasing, especially as our population ages in Illinois. But those videos are great, and I encourage any of you, if you don't know how to access them, call Michael and watch them, because they're very well done, but just taught me a lot about what our responsibilities and what our staff does day in and day out in a great fashion with tremendously loyal. Some are in the audience today. Riders and advisors to us and to our staff about some of the hurdles and experiences that people with disabilities have to face in everyday life to lead what you and I take for granted as an easy and normal way to get to work or to doctor's appointments. But those videos are really well done, and I encourage all of you to just take 15, 20 minutes sometime and look at them, because it'll really explain and dig deep. When you see these numbers on a sheet of paper, you'll understand what the heck we're really talking about. Yes, Ike, Director McAllis.
I have 2 questions, Michael.
Sure.
One is on the number of appeals that we actually have as far as being certified eligible.
Yeah.
About how many do we have, and what is the rate that they actually overturn that local decision?
Yeah, we only we do a pretty good job of doing a lot of screening up front in our process for eligibility. So a lot of times, most of the people are self-select to weed themselves out in the beginning, because we explain the service, how eligibility works. So that really results in just over 1% of an appeal rate. So we do really well with that. Usually it's people that were denied service that appeal, and so sometimes through the appeal process they're given the opportunity to provide additional information, sometimes doctor information, and as a part of that appeal then we can either give them some conditional eligibility, which is based on what they're able to do, not necessarily every trip, but the trips that they would need that assistance, or we would change that decision to all trip eligibility if the new information warrants that. The percentage of cases that we overturn is very low. Of that 1% of all the cases that we appeal, I would say we overturn maybe less than 20%. A lot of them are upheld because there's not additional information available.
I think that process has been really improved, because in the past, many years ago, we had a lot of appeals and a lot of confusion. I think
Yeah.
it's really been streamlined. And the last question I have is on the Travel Information Center. You show a decrease of calls by 80%, which is 4 million calls.
Yeah.
Is that linked to the fact that now online access is taking that need away, or what is that? I mean, that's 4 million.
Yeah, it's a
Contacts.
large number. Yeah, 80% decline over the last 4 years in calls to TIC. And, we believe that as a couple of things. One is technology availability. People can get all of this information on apps now. There's lots of different opportunities for people to go to different websites even to get this type of travel information. So we believe most people are doing that. In addition, there's the infrastructure. As we continue to develop it, we are integrating like next bus, next train into shelters and all that information that people used to call travel information for. So we believe between those two, people are choosing to find that information other ways.
I think that somebody's done a great job at reducing it. I mean, 80% is incredible. And then you're reducing eliminating the Sunday call.
Yeah, so we have made a decision that we're not going to have Sunday service at the Travel Information Center. We did that for several reasons. One is because of the decrease calls, and Sundays are the day that is the least amount of calls as well as the least amount of ridership on the system, so that makes sense. So, and also we were having some difficulties with staffing on Sundays and the pay that we were paying the call representatives. So we had to do an increase to bring it up to more comparable rates in other call centers, and as a result, this elimination of Sunday also balances out some of that increase in cost. So that was a decision that we made.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Great work, Michael.
Thank you.
Moving on, is our second informational item is an update from Metra. And Pete and Bruce, if you want to come on up. A few months ago, I think all of us remember we had Jim Derwinski and Metra. I think Pete was here. Come to our board and give us some background on the positive train control PTC implementation, how Metra is testing it, how it's going. There were schedule changes. I ride the line that has it. And Jim Derwinski, as he always does, is able to take something incredibly complex and explain to us, what it's like to have to install and run something as complex as PTC. As the summer has progressed, I ride the line with PTC. We've had a couple of times this summer where we've had to implement at Union Station what I call our sort of emergency ingress plans. And we just this week, had an incident on Metro Electric. Jim is out of town today, but I called Jim and Leanne and I called Jim, and said, hey, we'd really like you to kind of come back. But Jim's in D.C. testifying in front of congressional committees today on the PTC issue of all things. So we have a familiar face of Pete Zwolfer, who's in charge of Metra operations, and Bruce Marchese, who's Metra's chief engineering officer, just sort of here to give us an update and to answer any questions we've had. I've asked him to come here and just kind of give us another, just, post 2 months, how's the PTC rollout going. I can tell you as a rider, it's a lot better, and we're all adjusting to something that is unbelievably complex, unbelievably expensive with it's an unfunded mandate on our riders and us at Metra. And operating issues that we're currently facing. If you haven't seen it, there's a major story in today's Tribune stemming from Metra's board meeting on a variety of issues. The one thing I liked in there was actually at the end, which is for every person that rides Metra, essentially the state of Illinois saves, or you're worth over $4,000 to our local economy. That's an amazing number. So it's in the state's interest to put, as we affectionately call it, statistically in this business, butts in the seat of Metra. For every passenger you have, you're adding a lot of money to our economy. We all know, our board here knows, like your board, the funding challenges that we face. I saw Chairman Carlson had some, as he said, and Norm has really, among all the service boards, including the RTA board, been probably the sharpest with respect to delineating the problem that we have, including we have an unsustainable 21st century funding model in the state and in the city for mass transit. And I know there's been a couple of bumps in the tracks over the last several months. But really what I'd like you to do is kind of share with us what your teams are doing. I always want to assure riders, because I see them and climb on the train every day with them, that we're constantly working within the parameters we have to give them the service that they expect and deserve. But how are we doing? And then we'll sort of open it up for questions. I got a few questions on some topics, including Union Station and the purchase of Amtrak engines from California. But Peter, how are we doing?
Okay, well, good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Directors. I am Pete Swolfer. I'm Metra's outgoing Deputy Executive Director Operations. Chief Operations Officer Bruce is incoming come January 1. I'm retiring after 35 and a half years at Metra. To answer the first question, I think what's been dominating a lot of the news on transportation this summer is the performance on the BN and PTC, and I know we were here a month ago speaking of that. So let me give you an update on that. As we experienced with the new schedule change, we had to watch where people were going. We had to guess and estimate where people were going as we adjusted schedules and consists. So there was some overcrowding issues that we experienced, which we expected the first week. What made matters worse was the air conditioning problems on the BN. A lot of their cars were not working properly, were not serviced properly, which resulted in either a reduction in cars, or even if the cars were on a train, people aren't going to sit in a car that doesn't have air conditioning. So it just really made the problem worse. We've worked very hand in hand with the BN, and the air conditioning problem has been resolved. We've had minor, if any, issues, pretty much what we have throughout the system. So now we're really able to track where we're at as far as where the riders are coming from. Before we went into this PTC schedule, there was 12 trains on the Burlington Northern Network experienced over 100% capacity. It's just a well-traveled, as you know, Chairman Dillard, a well-traveled railroad. Part of our goal when we did this new schedule was to try to spread some of those loads out. It was difficult with the air conditioning problems and figuring out where people were going. But I'm happy to say right now we're at 7 trains. We've reduced 5 of those trains that were over 100% capacity on average. So that's a big improvement. Up until yesterday, their on-time performance was a little above 95% for September, which on that railroad we're very happy to see that. That's difficult to sustain just because of the difficulty and the sheer number of the trains they run in that operation, but that's greatly improved. So I think things have settled down on the Burlington quite well. In fact, just because of what we experienced with the air conditioning, the Burlington's coming into our board to speak in November about what their winter plan is. We work with them behind the scenes along with Union Pacific on their winter plans, but they're going to come and speak publicly, as well as the UP, of some of the things they've done to be prepared for winter. As you know, in August, on the 20th and on the 27th, both Mondays, we did have experienced some extremely overcrowding at Union Station. And the first incident on the 20th involved a Southwest service train that shares at south end of Union Station. And unfortunately, and it was actually an engine that had just come out of rehab, there was a pressure switch that failed. new equipment just happened to fail. And it failed at a choke point in Union Station that basically shut us down, and it happened at a time right before 5 o'clock where it's just a constant stream of thousands of people. So when we got enough people over there, got our emergency plan in place, the damage was done, and it took a while to get that train finally into the station. There was a health condition with our engineer on top of it, and eventually we got things rolling out. The following Monday, there was a Burlington Northern train that left, and it appears, there's still an investigation hearing that's pending. It appears that it was possibly human error, and human error caused some switch problems, actually run through switches. That blocked 2 other tracks and caused, again, overcrowding at Union Station. It was early enough where we were able to get our emergency response team and hold people back from that south concourse until we could start bringing trains in. A little later, as the operation was starting to move, unrelated switch failed again in Amtrak territory there, which prevented some trains from coming out of the yard for about 15 minutes. That just made the problem worse. But those were unrelated incidents, and it just is unfortunate. It's part of some of the things we deal with in Union Station and just the way it's configured.
Just, and I'll open it up to questions. On the air conditioning, I know Jim explained to me that the Burlington, and I think you've all heard me say I ride in a car that literally was delivered when Dwight Eisenhower was president. 1950s and 60s equipment. The air conditioning's on, I think, below,
Yes.
and you have, and Jim was explaining how many hours, man hours, it takes to do a repair on an old car versus a new car. But I would assume, am I right, that the age of these cars, clearly newer cars have probably more sophisticated, just like our homes, air conditioning has evolved over the last 50 to 60 years on the age on some of those cars. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. When you look at our equipment, our Highliner equipment on Metro Electric, the oldest is from 2005, and we replaced that whole fleet. I think that was all completed in 2007, 2008. Regardless, there aren't issues, and when there are, they're quickly repaired because it's newer equipment. Some of that stuff on the Burlington and even on some of our other lines are 50 to 60 years old. Jim, being a mechanical man, he's even explained it to me on some types of equipment that we're running, it takes literally 9 days if you were going to change that unit out. One thing that this brought to light is we moved some capital from one area into another, and we're going to be changing out 30 air conditioning units. In fact, I think that started already throughout the winter to be better prepared with some of this older stuff and for as long as it takes. So that's one of our fixes.
Old equipment is a problem, and it costs us more money to maintain it, let alone what the comfort and service to our riders. Anybody have any questions on the general opening remarks, Doug?
No, I was just going to ask you, what was the issue on the electric line that you had referenced earlier?
So on the electric line, and this was all post-rush hour, we had an inbound train that was on track 3 near our 67th Street location, and we had our DC trip. And so basically we lost power on all 4 of our tracks, and I think there was 3 or 4 trains that were in the vicinity, one actually in the vicinity where we couldn't get power to that train. Bruce has people that are in our substations, and from Brookdale, which is the next substation south, went into the 51st Street substation, and it would basically trip circuits. Eventually, we got 3 of the 4 tracks open, and then we were able to get the track that the train was on that we think caused the problem. We've done numerous tests over the last 2 days to determine the cause, and we've zeroed in on a particular car as being the cause. We just don't know the reason why, and this is newer equipment. So they're going out with a test train tonight, all 4 cars, and they're going to try to duplicate and see if there's something. But right now there isn't anything withstanding. It got a lot of fanfare for some reason, maybe just, I really don't know why. But it really happens on the electric. It's because of the newer system there. The wire's renewed, the cars are renewed. We just run a better operation. So maybe because of the rarity on that district, but it was later in the day.
Yeah, it was weird. I thought it was funny that it got as much attention as it did, and because it was sort of off hours, and Metro Electric that's a pretty problem-free line. Director Lewis.
Doug and I had actually asked this question before, and I think one of you gave an answer, but this is unrelated to PTC, but more in terms of maintenance. On the Metro Electric line, a lot of the renovations that have been done, which are quite nice, are deteriorating at a more advanced rate, like the steel and some of the structure. I think the maintenance schedule was going to be altered as you went forward. I just wanted to get an update on that, because I think that was the response I got before, which was, the maintenance schedule needs to be reviewed so that just routine maintenance on those platforms, because they're a little bit above ground, it's a little bit more difficult, is going to be altered. I just wanted to get an update on where that stood.
Well, I can tell you, under Don Orsino's leadership, a lot of the work we did was after maintenance was contracted, and it was costly. It takes time, and sometimes that's your only option. But what we discovered is that we could do a lot of this work in-house, especially if we go out and hire some really good carpenters, electricians, and whatnot. And that's what we did under Bruce. We developed what we call Beautification Teams, and they've come out and they've actually, for example, at 59th Street, they've replaced platforms, warming houses, staircases, and we've done that all in-house. And because Metro Electric many of them are wood platforms, the Hyde Park, those are all renovated and are new and are composite, but everywhere else it's mostly wood. We're able to do a lot of that in-house. So your team, they go out there and we get different requests from communities to look at different areas, which we do, and we get them on a list, and much of it is done internally.
So I get a lot of feedback on that. So if people have requests, they should bring them into Metro and say, would you take a look, for example, at Van Buren? I get a lot of commentary about the Van Buren station. Should I direct them to Metro to say you should really kind of give your request into the Metro team, and then it'll be put in the process hopper? Sure,
and Van Buren's a little unique. Van Buren, we had put in about $19 million since 1999 just to try to keep that place from really becoming an eyesore and a problem. We've come to the point where we realize that station, it's a three-phase project, really needs to be replaced, a lot of it. That's starting to gain some steam. It's a funding issue. That's about $35 to $40 million project. We've got concept. We don't have design yet, but that's what the estimate is. Probably start hearing more about Van Buren, because it is going to need a lot. Taking Van Buren out of it and some of just the neighborhood stations, those are the things we can do internally. We'll do some things at Van Buren, but it's minor to what really needs to be done there and our capabilities.
Director Lewis, and Pete and Bruce, I call those, when you're out setting aside Van Buren, I call those Botox walks, where you take a little walk and see what you need, a little injection here and there for face keeping and upkeep. But it was a college president who said that each week, she told me, she walks a different part with her staff of her campus, and she says, we're going on our weekly Saturday morning Starbucks coffee in hand Botox walk of the northeast quadrant of my campus with her buildings and ground staff, and says that needs to be painted, that window needs to be replaced, and so she affectionately called it a Botox walk, and I think that's what you want to make sure they're doing, which it sounds like they do have a plan.
Well, and it just on that district alone, Millennium Station, when it used to be called Randolph Station, I was there for 9 years as a director when that looked like your worst unfinished basement. And so a commitment was made, funding was provided, and $22 million later, we have a pretty nice station down there under a bridge. That's the type of thing we need, and that's what Van Buren needs. Van Buren is a downtown station, and it is in need, but there's all kinds of needs, so it's just got to get in the queue, and then there's got to be funding made available.
Any other questions? PTC on other lines. So where are you on some of the other lines with respect to PTC?
Okay, let me, I just want to thank you
And thanks, Bruce,
for being here
coming. Really
today,
appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman and fellow directors. Let me just start with the BN real quick. The BN is almost done. I mean, they're probably about 95%, so they've been working many, many months this year to get it going, and they've been doing a great job. So that'll definitely be fully PTC by the end of the year. The UP, we've been in contact with them. They're going through some final testing and some reconfiguration of manpower because they're coming into Chicago a little bit sooner than they expected and we expected, which is fine. But we're hoping to start revenue service demonstration, which is effectively running PTC with passengers out there, starting on all 3 lines by the end of the year. But keep one thing in mind, as we've seen, the BN has taken many months. It's what a lot of people think you just flip the switch and everything works. It's not. It's trained. It's equipment by equipment by equipment. So we commission it. So it takes quite a while to do it. So sometime in 2019, the whole UP will be done. But as far as Metra, I'm happy to say, as of this Monday, we'll be 100% installed on all onboard equipment, whether it's in the locomotives or our cab cars, all of our right-of-way equipment, which is called wayside, and that's an important part of the milestones for our deadline extension. As many of you may know, there's a deadline at the end of this year that everyone's supposed to be implemented with PTC, but there was a congressional extension possibility if you met certain milestones by the end of 2018 that you can get granted a 2-year extension to 2020. We knew all along that 2018 wasn't going to happen. We didn't have the money. It takes a lot of time. The testing is just incredible. So we knew we were going into this, we were going to hit all these milestones. So my goal was October 1st, so we've beat that. And we've also submitted an application to the FRA to start revenue service demonstration. We're either going to have the approval this week or it's going to be next week. And starting October 1st, we'll do revenue service demonstration on the Rock Island. And again, we'll probably be fully commissioned sometime second quarter, third quarter of 2019. It'll be fully in RSD. And then at the end of the year, Southwest Service, we're going to start, and probably around December, start their revenue service demonstration testing. And that'll, of course, they don't have as many trains as the Rock Island, so the commission time will be less. And then the other lines will follow suit. But at the end of the day, we're still on track to have everything implemented and running by early 2020, according to what we submitted to the Congress, and that still beats the end of the 2020 deadline. And as far as the extension, we're actually going to apply for it by mid-October. You can do it by the end of the year, but we don't want to wait at the 11th hour and be piling in an application on top of everybody else, because out of the 41 railroads that have to put in PTC, from what I hear, at least 40 of those 41 railroads will be filing an extension. So it's going to be a lot of paperwork for the FRA to process, but we want to be in a little bit earlier so we can get our extension reviewed and approved.
That's great. Thank you. I was happy that in that Tribune story today, they point out again the cost of this, and again, it's essentially an unfunded mandate.
Right.
And it's incredibly complex.
Yeah, we're spending close to $400 million. But now, the latest numbers I've got industry-wide, whether you're passenger, commuter, or freight, is climbing towards $20 billion now. It was 13 to 15, but there's a lot of things involved, and there's a lot of unforeseen conditions that you evolve. As you can imagine, new technology never developed before, so that number is starting to creep towards $20 billion industry-wide. So it's really, really getting large.
It's incredible. Other questions? Switching gears a second, Union Station. There's another article. The Tribune architectural critic today has his second review of the revised plans of Union Station. And Leanne and Sarah Pang and myself went over and met with some representatives of the city a couple of weeks ago who told us the new plan's coming. My question is, I'm not an architectural critic. And it all is great, and I understand air rights is what makes it happen. But when I got off my nice, squeezed, crowded platform today, and take my little 7-minute walk with the thousands of other people coming off my train, when I read these pieces in the Tribune, what's happening in the plan to the operational guts of Union Station? Platforms, track, rain coming down from Canal Street, onto the heads. Is anything happening inside what I call the guts of Union Station, or is it all just glitz with hotel and the Grand Hall and perhaps a bank headquarters? This going to help operations at all?
I think one of the phases that is most beneficial to Metro and its customers is the portion where the north and south concourse opens up. So as you described, it's almost like a maze down there. When you have a service disruption, it's just to keep everybody safe and keep those crush loads out of there. Takes a lot of effort. That part of the project is actually starting to gain some steam. Amtrak has talked to us, and I believe that's going to be the first part they're going after, the first part of this project, which is the most beneficial part to Metro. So there are talks, there's some stepping going on in that direction, and sure, that's not going to get headlines until that actually starts, but that's going to be just a tremendous benefit to everybody, even when there isn't service disruptions, because it takes that maze out of the equation.
And I always love to remind people, more folks go through Union Station on a daily basis than go through Midway Airport. It is an incredible number of people that go through that mouse maze every day, let alone having to operate, trains in those conditions. Any other questions or concerns? If not, thank you, and keep up your vigilance. I for one understand how difficult it is. It's one of the things I learned when I got here, how unbelievably complex it is, especially when you're dealing with a number of private sector railroads and Amtrak, which which are our partners in moving the folks that we do every day. It's an amazingly complex operation. It's not like having an HO train set in your basement.
Well,
so I'm glad you two are there.
And we really appreciate your support and actually your efforts to understand the complexity of this, because it is very complex. And there's just a great team behind us. We're just a spokesman today, but there's a great team behind us. If it wasn't for them, we would not succeed based on all the obstacles we're faced with daily. But it goes to the team.
Yeah, thank you. And, I appreciate your time, because what you do is you give us, and each of our members has a constituency of their own from whomever their appointing authority is. And you and Mr. Dewinski, as Don Orsino did for many years, you give us the ability to take something that's incredibly complex, hopefully let us, in layman's language, understand it, so we can go back and explain it to folks when they ask, what's going on. So thank you very much. Anything else? Thank you, gentlemen, very, very much. Appreciate you being here. All right. Item 7 is the approval of a consent item as it appears on the board agenda. There's one item, and that's an ordinance authorizing an amendment to the 2018 to 2022 capital program and ICE-funded projects. Any questions or comments? Ike, anything else we need to discuss on that? Can I have a motion then to accept it? Director McGallis moves that we approve this, seconded by Director Friga. Is there a leave for the attendance roll call? Sig no objection, the leave's granted. I think that's 13-0.
13 ayes, 2 absent, 1 vacancy.
Super. Thank you, Audrey. Item 8 is the approval of contract and expenditure items as they appear on the board agenda. 8A is an ordinance authorizing a service agreement for voice and data network services, I think, with AT&T. Really explained well in the packet. And 8B is travel expense reimbursements. Any questions there? If not, can I have a motion to Director Ross moves that we accept, second by Director Christopher Melvin. Is there leave for the attendance roll call there? Seeing no objection, leave is granted there, and that will be so approved.
13 ayes, 2 absent, 1 vacancy.
Thank you. Item 9 is new business. Any new business to come before the board? It was a short time between our last meeting and this meeting. I want to remind everybody, and this is important, our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, October 18th, 2018, with committee meetings beginning at 8:30, followed by the board meeting. But in November, and I got to make myself a note to double check my calendar. In November, we're not going to hold a meeting on November 15th. Instead, that meeting gets moved to November 28th, followed by a special finance committee meeting that morning that'll begin at 9. So just make sure that the board meeting is November 28th. Director McAllis, our finance guru of the board, I see is making sure that he's got his special finance committee meeting on at 9 on November 28th. But just want to make sure all of you, note that. And obviously you're going to get reminders from Audrey, but just note that one change.
Yes, Chairman, just a slight correction. The board meeting will follow the special finance.
Right, correct. Thank you. Item 10 is the executive session. And Nadine, we're going to have an executive session today. So will you cite the exceptions, please?
Yes, if the board would vote to continue its meeting in closed session pursuant to subsections 2C1 and 2C5 of the Open Meetings Act, we could then proceed to executive session, after which we will likely return to open session to consider a remaining item and then adjourn.
Right. Unlike usual or normal, we're going to go to executive session, and we're going to come back out here for a couple of seconds afterwards for action. So do not leave after the executive session. Do I see any objection to that? If not, we are resolved into executive session.
We need a motion and a second to do that.
Okay. So Director Higgins moves, seconded by Director Durante, that we resolve ourselves into executive session. Is there leave for the attendance roll call? Leave's granted, and we'll go into executive session, and we'll come back here following it. Thank you.
I can go ahead, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Where's she?
Yeah, she's going to talk to Audrey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.